Gaspar Yanga, often simply known as Yanga, is a legendary figure in the history of Mexico and the African diaspora. He was an African-born slave who became one of the first known leaders of a successful slave rebellion in the Americas, establishing a free settlement in the mountains of Veracruz, Mexico. His story is one of resilience, defiance, and the pursuit of freedom against overwhelming odds. Yanga is believed to have been of royal descent from the Brand people in West Africa. Captured and sold into slavery, he was transported to the Spanish colonies, where he was forced to work on the sugar plantations in Mexico. During the early 1600s, Spanish colonial rule relied heavily on the exploitation of enslaved Africans and indigenous peoples for labor, especially in the lucrative sugar industry. By the time Yanga arrived in Mexico, he had become a figure of leadership and resistance. In 1570, he led a daring revolt, escaping with a group of fellow enslaved Africans into the dense, mountainous terrain of Veracruz. There, Yanga and his followers established a fortified, self-sustaining community known as a palenque or quilombo, an independent settlement of escaped slaves. Yanga's palenque, hidden deep in the rugged mountains, became a beacon of hope for other enslaved people seeking refuge from their brutal conditions. Over time, the settlement grew, attracting more runaway slaves, known as cimarrones, and even some indigenous people fleeing Spanish oppression. The community was fiercely independent and relied on agriculture and guerrilla warfare to sustain itself. The group survived by raiding Spanish caravans transporting goods between the port of Veracruz and Mexico City, often redistributing the spoils among themselves and other oppressed communities. For decades, Yanga's settlement remained elusive, thriving as a free community despite attempts by the Spanish to crush it. The palenque was strategically located, making it difficult for the Spanish colonial forces to penetrate its defenses. Yanga, with his military acumen, organized his people into a formidable force that repelled several attempts to recapture them. In 1609, the Spanish colonial authorities, frustrated by the loss of goods and the growing reputation of Yanga's settlement as a sanctuary for escaped slaves, launched a large-scale military expedition to destroy the community. Led by the Spanish conquistador Pedro González de Herrera, the campaign was intended to end the defiance once and for all. After fierce battles between Yanga's forces and the Spanish, the cimarrones used their knowledge of the terrain to resist the onslaught. However, recognizing the persistent threat posed by the Spanish army, Yanga proposed a negotiation. In a show of both diplomacy and strategic wisdom, he offered peace on the condition that the settlement be granted autonomy and that the former slaves be recognized as free people. After prolonged negotiations, the Spanish crown agreed to the terms in 1618. The settlement, known as San Lorenzo de los Negros, became one of the first free African townships in the Americas. The Spanish agreed to refrain from re-enslaving the residents, in exchange for their promise to cease attacks on Spanish caravans. Yanga's community was allowed to exist peacefully, and they governed themselves with minimal interference from the colonial authorities. Yanga's successful rebellion and establishment of a free black settlement stand as a powerful symbol of resistance and self-determination. His community thrived long after his death, and today, the town he founded is known as Yanga, named in his honor. It is located in the state of Veracruz, and its people celebrate his legacy every year. In 1871, Yanga was officially recognized as a national hero of Mexico. His story serves as a reminder of the strength and determination of African slaves who, against unimaginable adversity, fought for freedom and autonomy. He is celebrated not only as a symbol of Mexico's complex racial history but also as one of the earliest champions of liberation in the Americas. Yanga's struggle was more than just a fight for personal freedom, it was a declaration of human dignity, a stand against colonial oppression, and a precursor to the broader abolitionist movements that would follow centuries later. His legacy endures, both in Mexico and in the global memory of those who fight for freedom against injustice.